Jimmy?
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, man?
Good. Can you hear me okay with this headset on?
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Perfect, yeah.
I appreciate you taking some time to chat today. I know that for those listening to the podcast here on the Music on the Menu page, Jimmy was the guest on the radio show, our guest back in, I think it was August, when you were promoted to the president and CEO of BMLG Records. And we had a great conversation with Jimmy that night. We talked a lot about his working his way up through the music industry over the years, and we played some of your songs. So if you're listening to this podcast and you missed that show, that's still up on YouTube. Just type in my name and Jimmy's name, and it'll pop right up for you. But for today's conversation, Jimmy, I wanted to touch base with you about a couple of things. First of all, you're down in Nashville, the Tennessee area. How are you doing? How's you and your family coming through all this right now?
Well, thank you for asking. We're doing great. Kind of ironic, but we flew to Spain in the beginning of March, and we were in Madrid and Valencia and then Barcelona. And when we were in Barcelona, that's when President Trump came on and said, we need to get people back to the United States. And we were, I think we were the last flight out of Barcelona to make it back to the United States. And
wow.
So it was a little harrowing to be there. And when you're in a foreign land and you hear that, the news that, you got to get back, it's a very, it's a very intense thing to hear, but it's even more intense when you're abroad. So yeah. It was, we made it back. It was all safe. And then as soon as we came back from Europe, we went to our house in Florida and quarantined ourselves down there for almost 3 weeks. And then we drove back to Nashville. So we're back in Nashville right now. Everybody's good. Family's all good. But thank you for asking. I hope your family's good as well.
We're hanging in there. Yeah, the kids and myself and my dad and everybody, we're doing just fine. Were you back in Nashville? And thank you for asking. Were you back in Nashville for the tornadoes, or were you still in Florida?
No, that was the tornadoes were before we went to Spain.
Okay.
So that happened a little earlier, which was just devastating damage.
It seems like that wasn't that long ago, but, one thing after another here in this country right now.
Yeah, it's some very tenuous times, to say the least.
Jimmy, one of the things I wanted to talk about was Jerry. Obviously, we got word here in northeastern Pennsylvania earlier this week that Jerry Hludzik, formerly of the Boys and Dakota, had passed away. Yeah. He had been ill for a couple of years, and so I think maybe people weren't totally surprised, but yet it always is a surprise when someone's gone. I know that you and Jerry went back 35 years or so, going back to 1985. Is that when you and Jerry first met?
Yeah, it was. We recorded an original version of Where Are You Now, and we did it at Susquehanna Sound with a guy named I think Jim Garrison, who was one of the engineers down there. And it sounded wonderful, but I sat back and I said, I think I drove out to Bill Kelly's house and I said, here's what we've got. Is there a chance you could help us with this? And, they were obviously professional musicians, professional producers. And so we had to go out and find, some investors to get us to, pay the rightful services. And initially they just came on board, Bill and Jerry and Rick Manwiller, to sing. And so the first version that everybody heard on the radio was them singing background vocals on the older recording we did from Susquehanna Sound. And then when that song kept going and blowing up, and when Columbia came after us, when we went to the warehouse and they actually produced it, and Rick played keyboards on it. Of course, Rick is no longer with us as well. Bill played some guitar, sang background vocals. Jerry sang background vocals. And Jerry actually played bass guitar on Where Are You Now. And his part that he played was really an integral part of that song because it moved it along. It kept it put a nice little groove to a down-tempo song.
So that was the version. The 1985 version was the regional hit here in Northeast PA, and then the 1989 version was the one that Jerry and those guys played on, and a national hit.
No, we actually released it on Columbia with Jerry's and Bill and Rick's production in '86.
86.
So in March of '86.
There was a middle version. That's right.
Yeah, and then when it was when we released it, we released the same version we released in '86.
Okay, so then they were on the national hit then.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on Jerry's loss at this time, Jimmy?
Just devastating. And I'm 57, and as they say, as you get to a certain age, you start seeing a lot of your friends and people you admire, sadly moving on and passing away. And when I heard the news, it was obviously devastating. He's been, I don't want to get choked up about it, but he was a big teacher to me in the beginning. I remember when we got dropped from CBS, he and I must have spent, well, back then, because long distance was expensive. So he lived in Dalton and I lived in Plymouth. So I'd be on the phone with him for hours, and my mom would say, "Who are you talking to in Dalton?" and it would be Jerry. And then of course we'd call record companies in New York and LA, and he was right there by my side, showing me how to talk to record companies and understand who does what. And as you know, I've become a big student of the business, but he probably was the driving force in the beginning to explain to me what A&R does, what promotion does. And he always taught me about the pitfalls that they went through, and as well as the success stories that they did with the boys and with Jerry Kelly and then with Dakota. So he was very instrumental, and he was very patient with me. And he also taught me an enormous about songwriting, because we wrote a song that we ended up doing 5 songs with him and Bill and Rick down at the warehouse, and we mixed them at the record plant. And one of the songs I wrote was called "Give Love Another Try" with Chuck Yarmy. And I remember the chorus melody line I had. I played it for him, and he goes, "Why don't you try this?" And he really taught me how to make a chorus jump. He taught me a lot about melodic structure, and he became a writer on the song, of course, rightfully so. But it was really an eye-opening experience, and it kind of separated the men from the boys, so to speak. And I was the boy.
No pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. He taught me a lot about how to make a song, have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I'm eternally grateful for him for that.
Well, it's funny. One of my questions for you was going to be what did you learn from Jerry? But you just answered it. I mean, in that experience that he had, being with a couple of labels in the the 70s and early 80s, and having highs and lows, like you had said, the high of the Queen tour, and then maybe a disappointment after that. One of the things that I always enjoyed about Jerry, talking to him, and I'd be curious to your thoughts on it, is Jerry was very prideful of that career. Even though there was ups and downs, I think he was very prideful of their body of work, and he loved talking about Dakota and music. And maybe that's why you had some of those, hefty phone bills back then.
Well, absolutely. And I think, they worked with some, people don't know, but they worked with John Robinson, J.R. Robinson on drums. Humberto Gatica mixed the Runaway record. Danny Serafin produced all 3 records. But I think Paul Jackson played guitar. Just a superstar lineup, because they're all part of that West Coast, group of talented musicians. Some that played on Steely Dan, some that played in Toto. And then, a lot of people don't know, but they had a very successful publishing deal in Nashville with Dwayne Allen from the Oak Ridge Boys. And that was back, I think, in '89 they got their deal. And they had a few country songs. I'm not sure if they had any cuts, but they were definitely some, in some very, very serious circles of songwriters and producers.
Yeah, it was an accomplished career, Jimmy. It really was, and I knew that you were a part of it with him. I know we talk a lot about his work with the boys and Dakota over the past few days, and people are sharing songs and videos and memories on social media and in some newspaper articles that have been published up here. But he's also a really good producer. Did a terrific record with the Mere Mortals too back in 1999, one of my all-time favorite records. He's a talented man, and I thank you for sharing some of your thoughts on him.
If you remember, he also did the Give Love for Christmas thing at Holland Sound, which he kind of replicated on a local level, the Bob Geldof thing and the We Are the World thing.
Yeah, brought everybody together,
Yeah, it was great times.
It's a great song too. Jimmy, another thing I wanted to talk to you about, obviously here we are in week 4 or so of the COVID-19 crisis. Just to give you a little update from up here at home, we've got I think 28,000 cases in Pennsylvania, over 700 deaths. Here in Luzerne County, over 1,600 cases, 28 deaths. Lackawanna County has about less than half the cases, but the same number of deaths. So it's here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's in in Tennessee as well. Well, I want to ask you a couple things. How's it affecting Nashville as a city? How's it affecting the music industry? Let's start with the music industry. You know, you're at the top level in the music business as the president of the label. You know, what has this done to your label and the business as a whole? Is everything on hold? Is there still any work being done? Are you still promoting records that are out to radio? How has this affected you?
Yeah, well, we actually, I think it's probably 3 weeks ago when Scott Borchetta, all the information became very clear, and we shut down the offices, and everybody's working from home. We're practicing social distancing, and we're quarantining ourselves. But we are working, I don't want to say business as usual, but it's business as usual in the new normal. We're doing all of our meetings on Zoom and on Teams. We are still talking to radio, still talking to digital service providers, still talking to television shows, still talking to soundtrack folks. It's just being done remotely. I think the bigger, there's no think about it. The concert business is really taking a hit because you can't have large groups of people. So if you think about who that impacts, it impacts not only the artists, but the amazing team of people who put these shows on the road. So you've got truck drivers, you've got guitar techs, you've got background musicians, you've got carpenters, you've got concession workers, people who may want to go to work but can't, people who sell sodas and beers and chips, and people who keep the facilities, in shape and sparkling clean. This is impacting them a ton. And then the managers as well, because the managers primarily get a lot of their income from touring. And so touring right now is stopped. And so that's it's impact. I shouldn't say that. I think some people would be surprised at how deep that really impacts the music industry in terms of live performances.
It's strange because we're getting mixed signals. We're taping this interview for those listening on April 16th at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. President Trump is supposed to come on television tonight at 6 o'clock and maybe give some news about some reopening of some part of the country, I guess somewhere down the road, and we'll all find that out in a couple of hours. But with music, we're getting mixed signals. I saw one venue that I really love here in northeastern Pennsylvania. There's a lot of great shows, and they announced a lot of rescheduled shows for the fall, shows that were canceled in May and June, July, new dates for those in September, October, November. And yet some people are a little bit leery of going that far. Have you heard anything from someone like a Live Nation, like someone that really has a say in that? Because they're the ones that are the promoters are the ones that are going to give the green light, and are we going to roll the dice? Are people going to come? That would be rolling dice, that part of it. And then, do we have the blessing from the Commonwealth or the states? Is it safe for people to gather? I really feel that all these stories that I've been seeing, the one that I'm waiting to hear from is someone like Live Nation. What are they thinking? Are there going to be shows this year or not? Have you heard anything?
Well, I think, I have not heard anything directly. I think I think that we're all learning about this every day. There's new information that comes in, and I think people are learning and understanding it and processing it, and I think everybody is trying to be as optimistic as possible in terms of touring. I think everybody would love to be able to get out and celebrate music in a live, forum, but I think everybody knows they have to be safe, and I can't speak for that in terms of an industry, but as a parent of 2 children who love to go to concerts, if we open business for concerts, I have to think about, my daughter has a mild form of asthma. And if Katie said, hey, Dad, can I go to this concert? She has a predisposition where if she was near somebody with, the COVID-19, that could be it's always very serious, but it could be even more serious for someone who has an underlying health issue. So as a parent, I would have to sit back and say, how are we going to deal with that? So Lynn and I would talk about it, but I think, that there's so many questions, and I appreciate everyone's optimism, and I hope we keep getting as much clear and coherent information as we can so we can all make the right decisions and do things healthy and, in accordance with the experts who are leading us.
I think that, you hit on an interesting point there about your personal decision involving your daughter, your family, because I was talking to Brett Alexander yesterday, I'm sure you know Brett from
Sure.
the Badleys and so forth, and asked him a similar question. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how people react. You know, you talk about New York City, which is getting, you know, really hammered right now with this virus. Yeah. And, you know, it's hard to imagine 40,000 people at a Yankees or a Mets game, you know, 6 weeks from now, which is sort of the plan right now. And if they're given the green light, if we all are, and those things open, I think it's going to be fascinating to see how the American public responds to that. Is it going to be a mass exodus? I can't wait to go. Are you going to see huge gatherings right away because people are tired of being cooped up for 2 or 3 months? Or are people going to kind of put their toe in the water and say, well, I don't know yet. Let me see how this goes for a little while. And I think that's something that the concert industry has to think about too. Yeah.
I mean, again, there's more unclarity than there is clarity. And I salute all of our first responders, the medical community, the people who are delivering food and delivering supplies and still cooking at restaurants. And I mean, those people are just doing amazing work. And in some ways putting themselves, they're putting others in front of themselves. I mean, they're trying to help, and that's just amazing. And they need to be saluted, at the highest level.
Absolutely. They are certainly the heroes at this time, and I'm glad to hear that your people in your office are still able to work. I would feel badly for an artist that simply by chance worked for many years to maybe have their first album come out on a label like yours or any label, and the album dropped a month or so ago, and it was released at the end of March or so as planned because no one could see that it was going to go in this direction, and to have that album get lost in all of this and have so it's good to hear that your folks are still working with radio, and that if someone's out there and their career might be on the line right now at this time in their life, that they're still in good hands with folks like yourself.
Well, and I think people will be understanding if somebody new comes out or something comes out now and doesn't quite catch on as quickly as it would have in a normal situation. I think the radio stations, and they're going through their own struggles. There are people are being laid off at iHeart and Cumulus and let go, and nobody at iHeart wants that to happen. Nobody at Cumulus wants that to happen. I'm not so highlighting them. I'm just giving you two references.
No, it's all of them, sure.
So they're all going through that, and so I think everybody is being understanding of one another. And I think that's just a great thing. And it really shows just how great people are in this country helping one another. Everybody is sitting back and we're all in this together, and they're really showing each other a lot of love. And that's the one great thing, I think. One of the great things that may come out of this is that we'll just really understand each other's needs and how to help each other. And hopefully that stays with us for many years.
Another thing that might come out of it too, and we're seeing it here in northeastern Pennsylvania on a local level with so many of our talented artists, is doing the live stream. Sitting up in their home with the guitar and playing songs for people. For some of these artists have done almost a full show, maybe an hour or so, play one of their entire albums. Or some people go on for a half hour and play 5 or 6 songs. Have any of your artists on a national level been doing things like that?
Oh yeah, everybody's been doing that, and we were quick to do it at BMLG because we knew that people still wanted to be entertained. People still, if they're alone, they want entertainment, and so many of our artists jumped right at it. The ACM Awards did their a show on the night that the ACMs would have been. I think it's 2 Sundays ago, and they got like 7.8 million viewers. Wow. And one of our acts, Lady Antebellum, has a song out now called What I'm Leaving For. And the song is basically about those people who have to go to work and travel. And the reason they're traveling and going to work is because they support their family. Well, in the middle of this, when this COVID-19 hit, that song took on another meaning. And Hillary was one of the singers in Lady Antebellum, sat back and dedicated the song to all the first responders who were out there, as I said, doing all the things that, maybe not a lot of people would want to do. And that song got a lot of attention because of her real touching and heartfelt, salute. But yeah, we're still doing a lot of those things. And I think it's just one more way that, in tough times, music always has a way of healing, even if it's just a little bit. And I salute all the artists who do that, and because it heals a little bit of someone's day and makes them smile a little longer, and that's always a great thing.
And maybe moving forward, even in normal times, maybe when an artist releases a new album for the first time, maybe this opened up some creative ideas. Maybe a huge star debuts his first song from his living room someday, on his couch on a Facebook Live, because it's something he might never have thought of before until we were put in this situation. Who knows, right?
Yeah. Well, technology is always changing, and people are always looking for new ways to reach people, and that's one of the great things that happened with the whole onset of the internet and of course all the social sites. It's given us ways to reach out, and it's really been a big, I'm sure you know this, a big boost for the new artists. Like circle back to the beginning of our conversation, when Jerry, Bill, and I were working together, had we had social media, things could have been a lot different. There would have been a lot of free, so to speak, ways to market and promote what we had. And let's just take the life of Where Are You Now? When we did it, it started at KRZ in Wilkes-Barre, and then it went to Q102 and Rock 107 and all those kind of stations, and it moved to Allentown and Philadelphia. Well, had we had Instagram and had we had Facebook, that song could have went nationwide. And had it gone nationwide, would I have signed a different record deal? Would I have been given a better record deal? Instead of a singles deal, would I have gotten an album deal? And
Right.
could I have got a better deal monetarily? So the internet and social media has really provided artists with an incredible opportunity if they are savvy enough to utilize it. And
you're using it as a label to discover them. We talked about that when you were on the radio show last summer.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to see people who you might not normally get to see because they can't afford to do a show in Nashville, or there's an artist right now, I can't say the person's name, it's a female who we're going after, and this person was on one of the televised shows, the American Idols and the Voices, and I didn't see that episode, but I found out about this person through social media, and obviously a brilliant artist and a very unique voice. And so we're approaching that artist to try to do a deal. But I found out about it, even though there was national television, I still found out about it on social media. Social media.
Jimmy, you just mentioned Nashville, and maybe an artist couldn't come there. And the last thing I wanted to ask you was, how is Nashville? I mean, it's Music City. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a rock singer or a country singer or a blues singer. I think everybody recognizes what an important city it is to music. Most of the artists that I know that have moved to Nashville from northeastern Pennsylvania are not country artists. They're more Americana rock sort of artists, and I know several of them that have roots rock artists that have moved to Nashville. I mean, between the musicians and the hotels and the nightclubs and the tourism, it's got to be almost at a standstill, I would imagine. How's Nashville doing?
Well, the traffic is getting really intense. When I first moved here in '96, to get from where I live now to downtown might have taken 15 minutes, and now it could easily be an hour.
Because everybody's off from work and they're out running errands?
Well, they're going from the town has blossomed out. So from downtown Nashville going south, you have Brentwood, then you have Franklin, then you have Thompson Station, and you have all these towns that are developing, and people are moving farther out, getting more in the country, and commuting into Nashville to do business. So the roads in during rush hour and the roads out are really, really crowded, and the town is trying to adapt to it. We don't have a monorail, we don't have a subway. We just have, we call it a little big town, but now it's becoming a big town.
Big town, yeah.
And so the traffic's intense, but it's a beautiful place to live. And right now the roads are pretty quiet. You can pretty much get anywhere you want in 30 minutes.
Okay, so that's what I meant. But during the COVID-19 crisis, I mean, you worry about an industry. It's the entertainment industry. So you're talking about performers, you're talking about musicians, you're talking about, like I said, bars and nightclubs, tourism, hotels. That's Nashville. That's how most of us see it as a place. And so, we're all worried about our own families and our own employers and where we work. But as someone that has a great interest in music, like myself and the people that would be listening to this podcast, I guess we all want to make sure Nashville is going to pull through this all right too.
Yeah, well, Nashville, we have a slogan that says Nashville Strong. and they can, we're so many people work hand in hand to get through the tornadoes. It was really an incredible sense of community and charitable donations and, elbow grease and sweat equity that people have helped each other with. And the same thing is happening now. I mean, we all pull together, and I think that's happening all across the country. And I just think that shows the great American spirit.
Jimmy, thanks so much for taking some time this afternoon. Again, tell Lynn and the family I said hello.
You got it.
It's always great to talk to you, and we will put this up on the Music on the Menu page later this evening so that people could hear how you're doing and your thoughts on the passing of Jerry and how you, as a label president, are navigating through this crisis. I appreciate it very much.
Well, my pleasure, and please, everybody back home, be safe.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you, Alan.